also to give it for the other teachers and members of the staff that cannot join. So I just started the recording for everyone to know. And I will continue with how we can see that we're starting to have difficulties with our mental health. So you enter in conflicts with other people, you take personally the things. You have the impression that the things you are doing lack sense and purpose. It's like you're doing things, but you feel that they are useless. It's either too much, it doesn't have purpose, it doesn't have meaning for you. But this is a perception, because our mind is a creator of perceptions. Sometimes those perceptions are in contact with reality, and sometimes it's just movies that we have in our mind that we create, and sometimes they can go a long way. You start to feel emotions like sadness, or you start to have, or rage, or other emotions, or you have fluctuations in the way that you feel. And another key element, very important, related to mental health, is when you lose interest towards the activities, social activities, community activities, professional activities, and the interactions with the others. You're not in the mood to see people, or so on. When you see yourself avoiding situations that that help you with your mental health and with your well-being, you just avoid them. And of course, it's a situation, and I heard a lot this past months, yes, but it's important to take care of our health, it's important to be safe. Yes, it's important to worry. Worry is an emotion which is absolutely natural. It's good. It helps us. When we worry, we have this behavior that keeps us safe. But there is a fine distance from worrying to anxiety. And anxiety means that we create in our mind some scenarios about future negative outcomes. Like, for instance, when I worry, when I fear something, because I have a stimulus, because I have something to put my finger on it, this is why I am worried. I don't know, financially or professionally or relationally, but if I stay and I think forward, and we do this, science tells us that many people have anxiety. So practically, anxiety starts to have a negative impact on our physical, mental health, relational health, and so on. And it's important to start to understand and to be self-aware when it's a difference between worrying and anxiety. So nowadays, the source of panicking and worrying is, of course, the fear of disease, which is a significant stressor, but we also fear loss, or fear of suffering, or the limiting of our functioning, the idea of, I don't know, arriving in a hospital or having uncertain treatments. So there are many sources of panicking, worrying. And this has an impact on the relationships and on our emotional status, and so on. But it's important here, because the mind is composed of, like I said, scenarios. We each give signification. We
Important.
Significance, importance.
importance to everything that happen in our life. And this situation, which all of us are passing, it's important how we perceive it. We perceive it as an enemy. And this is something that is in our minds all the time. We perceive it as, I don't know, a theory of conspiration. This happens because some people want to hurt me. We see it as a personal failure. We see it as losses which are impossible to gain back, or we see it also from the point of view of opportunities. Now, I know that it might be quite difficult to see it from the opportunity point of view, but for our mental health, it's important also to integrate sometimes thinking that includes optimism, opportunities, and gratitude. And trust me, we can we can have a self-talk that integrates also these talks. Now we know out of science that the people that have the tendency to see things in a negative manner are more predisposed to stress, to anxiety, to depression, to exhaustion, and so on. And stress. It's important to know that stress, it's not just negative. Stress is mainly caused by stressors, right? Stress is a normal response of the body that helps us to face difficulties and, stressing things that happen in our lives. But again, stress, we can see it on a continuum, on a spectrum, and there is a point from where so stress is healthy, stress helps us, stress mobilizes the body, stress motivates us, but there is a fine line when stress starts to become negative. Now, some symptoms of stress is physical symptoms like pain, like tiredness, migraines, emotional, when you have the feeling of failure, when you detach yourself from the problem, when you don't stay there, when loneliness appears, a lot of negativity. And then we have the behaviors like procrastination, like, I don't know, disadvantageful eating behaviors, isolation, and many others. Now, it's important, in dealing with stress and with anxiety to see which is, because of course there are many, many recommendations. For the most important recommendation that help us to, I don't know, to have a better relationship with stress and with anxiety is sport, right? We all know that sport is extremely important. For some, it might be a discussion of cliche, but it's not like that. Emotions that are stuck in our body, stress, anxiety, worry, and so on, they need to be taken out of our body and processed through our body. We cannot stay and talk about them. Talking about stress, talking about trauma, talking about problems is super useful. But first of all, we have to have physical activities that help us to process stress and anxiety. But the most important thing is to try and identify what's the source of stress, what's the source that takes me to burnout. I think that burnout is something that everyone already, so it's an extreme form of anxiety, stress, depression. That's burnout, when you can it's very hard for you to handle day-to-day life activities, relationships, and so on. So practically you have no more resources to deal with what's happening, and you have to understand what's the resource, what's the care este sursa, what's the background, why, what's stimulating you to be there. Is it, first of all, a matter of how I um, balance my resources and my energy towards the day? And I'm working with some people, for instance, who that said that in this period they worked more and they worked not so smart. For instance, without taking breaks in a smart way, without eating very healthy. Uh, and they didn't stop, for instance, to stay and connect with their body and with their minds throughout the day, to see and to understand what the body is telling them. Take a break. Maybe, I don't know, that pain that you are feeling here, maybe it's a signal that you need to stretch or to drink water or to breathe for a while. So it's important for us during this time to be very attentive to the way that we manage our resources and our energy. And this attention has to be all day long. And one recommendation would be here, and it's something that I also tried, and it's super okay on the short term, is to put an alarm on the phone every hour, 60 seconds for 1 minute to just deconnect. So to give your mind and your body space every hour for 1 minute to do relaxing activities. I can stay and I can look at something without worrying or thinking about, etc., etc. I can have, I don't know, 60 seconds in which I just breathe, I balance the oxygen and the carbon dioxide in my brain, because this is what intentional breathing does. And it relaxes me, it deconnects me. I can do stretching in those 60 seconds. So just to have those 60 seconds to relax. Another recommendation here on how we handle energy and resources is to, for instance, if I have a mind that creates a lot of anxiety or a lot of, I don't know, worries, and I find myself just, ruminating and thinking, it's important to set un interval de timp, a time frame, let's say half an hour or 1 hour per day, in which I allow myself to think about the things I worry about, to think about all those things that come up in my mind, I don't know, from when I wake up or before I go to sleep, or so on. It's important to say, okay, from this hour to that hour. That this doesn't mean that it will happen from tomorrow or from today until tomorrow, but practicing this, we start to have a better control on the way that our mind works. So we have two practices until now. Each hour, an alarm that tells me 60 seconds relax, and to set a timeline, to say, I don't know, from 4 to 5 in the afternoon, I give my mind permission to think about whatever it wants to think. But that's it. And each time the thoughts, the fear, the worries come back, I just, kindly say, okay, so I have this thought, but this is for the interval 4 to 5. That's when I allow myself to think about this. And I allow myself to think about those from 4 to 5. Uh, Again, in regulating, I think someone's microphone is on. Can you please check again? Again, in order to balance our resources throughout the day, it's important, I don't know, in the morning to have 5-10 minutes of stretching, of yoga, of dancing, of whatever. The body needs to energize itself, because like this, it will gain more resources. Uh, this is the first topic. Now, the second topic, or resource, or sorry, not resource, cum se traduce sursă? Sursă pentru stres.
Source of stress.
The source of stress. Okay, so we have the first category of source of stress. We don't know how to handle our energy. So we look a bit about our schedules or the practices that we do during the day. Then the second one is the tensions in relationships. Now, relationships, we know that they are one of the most important thing that help us to have good mental health, well-being, emotional health, and so on. But they are in the same time great heaviness when they don't work properly. When they are good, they have a protective role, they help us. When they are problematic, when we have conflicts, when we don't experience trust and safety in the relationships, they create stress, they create tension a lot. So it's important to understand what are our difficulties, and this is really a good opportunity, because there are not so many times in which life puts us in such a stressful environment, in which the mind is forced to ask questions. Okay, let me see what is not working properly. Those are the periods in which, okay, they're very uncomfortable, but in the same time, there are periods of times in which we change. We have the great opportunity to change. And now it would be a good time to stay and just try to understand what are our vulnerabilities in relationship. Is it a matter of suspicion? I find myself sometimes, just having these thoughts that the other person has bad intentions towards me, and I cannot trust people. Or is it a matter of I feel that I'm being judged by others, or I'm being rejected by the other person, or I find myself that when I receive constructive or negative feedback, for me, it's such a big deal. It's such a big discussion that I stay half of the day just thinking about that discussion. So if I don't have this ability to have trusty relationships, or to have the space in which I can communicate or express my anger, my fear, my whatever emotion arises, it's important to step back and to see what can I do in order to make this better. Because problems in relationships, when I don't feel trust, when I feel that other people judge me, when I feel that I'm being rejected, when I feel that I cannot express myself, this is very, very exhausting. And losing resources, losing energy can take us to stress, take us to anxiety, and take us to depression. That low state in which you're just sad, or you just don't feel the need to interact, or don't have motivation, etc., etc. So the recommendation is, first of all, to not isolate ourselves. Isolation stimulates suspicion, stimulates all those thoughts. Like when I stay with my mind all by myself, the mind creates whatever it's programmed to create. And it's important, and this is another practice, to create a routine in the relationships. Even if it's, I don't know, one time per week, I have 1 hour, very good, put in that schedule with a friend, with someone that, I don't know, I have a fluent conversation, that I feel safe, that I can explore trust, and just have that hour in which I in which I feel good, in which I have the space to, I don't know, feel good. So one recommendation would be, think about one friend, one person that you feel safe, that you feel good with, and put it Sunday in the schedule. So next week, let's meet then. If maybe we meet in the park, maybe we meet online, it doesn't matter. But 1 hour, let's meet. Maybe we stay for one coffee online, or I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable. Try to avoid isolation. When I work from home, for instance, how I maintain relationships, as I said, we have different many options. Okay, so it's not the most relaxed and most ofertant, the most offering environment, but still we can find ways. Okay, so we have the way that we handle our resources with some practices, then the way we handle relationships, and the way we can grow throughout through our relationships and interactions, how we manage the relationships, what relationships need, I don't know, more attention because maybe they don't work properly, or to put more attention in those relationships that are really important and really good, and from where we take resources, from where we can just explore and take out the stress and anxiety and so on. And then the third is important to see what specific behaviors take us to stress, take us to anxiety. For instance, I don't know, the fact that I have a tendency to procrastinate. How can I say in English, când amân? Because
When I postpone.
exactly, when I postpone. Do I postpone things because this is a behavior that takes us to frustration, to loss of energies, to a lot of thinking? What can I do in this situation to try to analyze or to ask help from someone who I don't know, has better organizatoric abilities, and that person can help me to have a better, I don't know, way of setting up my agenda, let's say. If I see that this specific behavior is something, or I don't know, I can speak with a colleague, with a friend that can give a kind reminder. You know, it's important. We talked about this. You told me to remind you. How is it going? How is the project going? How is work going? How is, or the behavior is that I find myself avoiding difficult conversations. Each and every one of us, at one point, quite often, are placed in the situation in which we have to have a difficult conversation. Sometimes it's easier, the conversation, sometimes it's harder. Avoiding the difficult conversations will have a great impact on our mental health, on our emotional health, because as I said, we have a lot of, so first of all, we can detach and we can minimize those emotions. I don't care, you know, whatever. But on the long run, this is not a healthy way of regulating the emotions. So running from emotions doesn't mean I regulate my emotions. It just mean I run from them and they will come back. So about the conversation, if I see myself avoiding difficult conversation, I must understand what is the reason why I'm avoiding those difficult conversations. Is it hard for me to, I don't know, to hear a negative feedback, or is it hard for me to give the negative feedback because I fear rejection, or because I don't want to upset, or because I see difficult conversations? I see difficult conversations in a negative way. Difficult conversations, of course, at least those of us who were raised in Ardeal, me, were thought that, I don't know, saying no or speaking about things that don't work is not such a good idea. Avoid it. Panic and just, you know, stay with your thoughts, but don't show it. And of course, this takes us to frustrations, to passive aggressive behaviors, and so on and so on. So to learn how to have this difficult conversation with acceptance, with compassion, and so on. Now, another thing, it's important to see how do we connect with the work that we do. You know, I had many sessions in the last months, and the person was saying, you know, I don't feel the connection anymore with the job that I do. I don't feel purpose in what I do. It's like I don't have the drive for what I do anymore. I just feel it dull. I don't feel it. And it's true that some professions are more stimulating than others. It's true that working in front of a computer, it's not so, has its downfalls. You understand what I want to say. Okay. But it's important, if I start to lose the purpose in what I do, again, to have a space, be it, I don't know, a journal in which I start to write, to put my thoughts and what's in my mind down, and to try to find those reasons which are not so touchable. Like, what are the reasons that give me purpose in a job? That I have money, that I have colleagues, that I have, etc., etc. But to find those things that have a higher purpose. You know, I have a good impact on children, or sometimes when I do different activities, other people benefit from this. And this is important because, you know, it's important to look at the community, not just at what's happening in my mind, in my body, in my life. Because if I stay to focus on myself, this will, of course, disconnect me from the outside world. And when I stay too focused on myself, anxiety arises, stress arises, and so on. So to get more in touch with our needs, to see what's best for me. I don't know, to have physical activities in the morning, in the break time, or in the evening, to learn this about myself, to know when to take breaks, for instance, 1 hour, to see when during that week I can put half an hour to read, for instance, because I know that this helps me, to see which are those areas that I'm not autonomous yet, and I still need to work on them, because being autonomous on eating or on sports or on taking care of my relationships, this will have a good impact on myself. For parents, some recommendations: to, as possible, to try to be themselves, you know, because there is a huge, sometimes parents, and not just parents, adults, but parents put a lot of pressure on themselves, you know, to be great, to be absolute, to be marvelous, you know, to just give yourselves a bit of space, a bit of break, and don't forget that it's also about your life. And when you feel good, when you function good, when you have a good mental health, when you have an emotional health, the children will react. Remember that children, especially when they are in a young age, if after they have food, water, and sleep, they want happy adults. They don't need to go to Maldives or I don't know where. They need happy adults, because this is what they have 365 days per year. Happy adults, to have some routines that produce this happiness and this joy, and to not forget, like I said, to take care of the personal well-being. Of course, it helps a lot for parents to participate in psychoeducational social group meetings, to know that I'm part of that group that has this time to time meetings that they talk about, I don't know, things that help us, or they just talk about their problems, but also the things that they are doing now to manage better the times. To try to remember also the positive aspects, not just about how to avoid the difficulties, the problems, and to focus a lot on the problems, how to avoid them, but also to integrate positive aspects. Our mind has negative predisposition, which means we will be much more sensitive to the negative information. So to try to have this, to integrate in the mind more and more positive aspects, to reduce the need for perfectionism and to control everything, because we have three categories of control. What I can control 100%, just to write down, this is what I can control 100%, that I wash my teeth 3 times per day. This is something that I can, I don't know, or that I drink 3 liters of water. This is something which is 100% in my control. Then we have what I can control partially, and to make a list what it's partially in my control but not 100%, and to make a list with the facts which are not in my control. Now, stress, anxiety, anger, rage comes when we focus on the things that we cannot control. The fact that the borders are opened or they are closed, the fact that the politics change from today until tomorrow, and we get really angry that we cannot control it. We cannot control it. It's not in our control. And it's important to practice acceptance here. Yes, life is not perfect. Yes, life has good parts and bad parts. And to, get used to it, to get used also with the change and with the uncertainty, to expect new things tomorrow. Yeah. And to find context in which they can laugh more. Very important. I love to laugh. I hope you too. Okay. I hope until now you wrote some practices. In the end, I'm gonna ask you to maybe share in the chat 1 or 2. Elena, are you here? I know that you want to.
Yeah, I would like to jump.
Us.
Thank you, Raoul. Thank you very much for.
Then maybe we can open the Q&A, the question.
For touching on all these topics. What I would like to add is the complexity of the time we're going through. So up until now, until COVID-19, we looked at mental health from an individual perspective. So one person experiencing anxiety, stress, or depression would have symptoms such as loss of interest, lack of fun activities, lack of purpose. That was the outcome of anxiety and depression. However, the environment where we are now already has these, like, COVID-19 has forced us to stop planning too far ahead. So that might instill lack of purpose. COVID-19 has made things, has made difficult scenarios a lot more realistic. And that's a symptom of anxiety. Yeah. So what's happening with COVID-19? All these things that before we looked at them as an outcome maybe of depression, as an outcome of anxiety, now they're very much tangible in the environment. So they also trigger that more within ourselves. So it is a very complex environment that's bringing to the surface all of it. because it's making all of it more salient within ourselves. It comes from the environment, it brings it up in ourselves. And the combination makes it so hard for everyone. And as Raul was mentioning, anxiety and depression, they can all manifest in different ways. Now, why am I saying this? It's not as negative as it sounds. My point being that my main point being compassion. Compassion for ourselves, because we might be seeing parts of ourselves that we don't like as much. We might see ourselves as extremely anxious in a way that we haven't experienced before. We might see ourselves as extremely snappy in a way that we haven't experienced before. So when talking about acceptance, I would add some compassion to it. And by acceptance, I mean, I understand that right now it is difficult to be here in this situation. And I accept also those parts of me that I don't recognize and I don't like. I accept that I'm more anxious. I accept that I lose interest. I accept that I get really angry with my husband or wife or friend. And then I work with it to change it. But the acceptance part is incredibly important because even when we talk about relationship, for example, up until 1 year ago, if we were individually experiencing high levels of anxiety or some depression, we would end up we would very easily maybe find leisure activities that we would like, or go to work and crack a joke, or there would be an event with students in school that would immediately switch the mood to something more positive. Yeah. Right now, we go to work and we might meet many people who are as triggered as us. So that's what I mean by acceptance, accepting that things are more complex and seeing yourselves in others. So when the other person is anxious, when the other person might look particularly angry or selfish, it might not be about me. I see my anxiety, I see my worries in that person. They might manifest in a different way, which clashes. My way of expressing my worry clashes with the other person, but I recognize that we come from the same place. And that point of recognition is compassion. I see my struggle in the person in front of me. Therefore, I can take a step back and accept the situation and find a compromise, a common ground. Yeah, so acceptance in the sense of, I see the complexity. I recognize that there are parts of me that are coming to the surface. I recognize that conflict is more likely. And in the moment I step back, I see myself in the other person. And by seeing that point of contact, I can find a solution. That is deep compassion. I am you, you are me, in the end. We manifest differently, but to the core, we probably want the same. We want happiness, we want safety, we want the best for ourselves and each other. And something that is very, very important so after this first step of acceptance and compassion, that seeing the common ground we all come from, and possibly trying to see the best intention in each other, the next step is courage to communicate. So as it's very clear, conflict is very likely in these circumstances. It is very likely. as Raul was mentioning, yeah. So I made a note of something about conflict. What conflict happens where our resources are low? Conflict happens when anxiety is high. Many people experiencing these symptoms, conflict is very, very likely. In conflict, there is opportunity. I'm not saying it's easy. Yeah. I'm not saying flowery, easy opportunity. No. But in conflict, there is opportunity for growth through communication. So once I accept I'm emotional, take a step back with compassion to recognize we come from the same place. The step further is communication. We are all in the same page, being that a teacher, being that SLT, being that the president of the universe. Right now, we're all affected at the same time. And communication needs to go beyond roles and needs to come from a very human heart. I am struggling. I think you might be struggling too. Therefore, I choose to communicate my needs. I choose to let you know how I feel and how I would like things to be different. That communication is the key for growth and change. Without communication, we hold it to ourselves and we don't know what's going on. And taking that step and expressing what we think, hopefully kindly, and if it's not kind, we forgive and we try again. We are not kind the second time, we forgive again and we try again. Yeah, there is no failure. It is just opportunity for trying and persistence. So, and when we manage to communicate, that's when change happens. And I just really believe in it. And I also see the difficulty in it, okay? But yeah, I think acceptance of yourself and others, even of the discomfort of a not nice conflict, of not feeling understood, compassion, similarities, and then communication, which might not come natural the first time or the second time, but if we keep trying, that's how we move forward. And regarding one last point about what Raul said is about strategies to look after ourselves. I have personally struggled, and you know me, lots of you know how much I'm a yoga addict. Yeah, I love my yoga and my healthy eating. And well, honestly, since the start of the year, I have almost not practiced. Yeah, I have not found the strength to practice, not necessarily physical. It is mental and emotional, because it's yoga for me, okay? Everyone has their own way. It might be going for a run, it might be listening to music, it might be praying, yeah? So I'm not discriminating any type of self-care. For me, yoga is mine, you have yours. But to me, it's a practice that makes me connect to myself really deeply. And I haven't had the energy to do that yet. The point being, it doesn't matter if you haven't yet, we should keep trying till we do it. Yeah, so if self-care kind of wasn't there in these first few months because things were quite hectic at work and it was difficult, it doesn't mean it cannot start today. It can start today, it can start in 5 minutes, it can start tomorrow. And again, if it doesn't start today because you still don't find the energy or motivation, we can try again the day after. So I encourage everyone, including myself, to keep trying, because it is a process. It is not a once-off. And sometimes the process requires motivation and persistence till we get in the right track. And I feel very lucky in this school because many people care about these kind of things, and we can even use each other's support to find that extra motivation. I hope that was clear.
Wow, beautiful. You know, when you said about yoga and practicing it, I just remembered that in December I had the opportunity to practice a lot because I was in a very nice place. And this year was such a struggle. And although I know how good it makes for my body, for my mind, but it was really difficult to have a consecutive practice, a constant practice. Thank you for sharing.
Can I say just one last thing that just because we are all teachers and psychologists, and we also tend to feel we are caring people at heart. And because of our professions, this caring part is more developed for everyone here. And so this might make us more sensitive to the environment and to people's clues, yeah, because professionally we are used to responding to people constantly. So the empathy is very developed. In a context that's so highly stressful, we might be very affected because we're used to taking on board other people's problems and emotions. So that's also why we need to learn to protect ourselves a bit. So and set limits, as Raul was saying, learning to say no, set limits, and try to feel where is my space physically and energetically and mentally, and can I say stop? No, this is too much for me now, and protect myself rather than taking on board everyone's problems. That was the last thing. Sorry, I forgot, Raul. I'm done.
Yes, so please, let's take some questions until 9 and until 10 and 20, and then we will do the closing of this session. Please help us with questions. What are your curiosities, or I don't know if you like to share something or maybe to ask something specific to the subject of anxiety, stress, and how to handle this these times. We are here.
Question.
Yes.
How do we, when students come to us and tell us that they're depressive, that they're experiencing depression, what do we do? What do we say? What?
Yes, good question. First of all, ask for more details. Create the space in which the student can express more, because, and I've learned this in my practice, listening without searching too easily, too quickly the strategies, you know, just to create that space in which the person can express itself. They find many times they find the resources to deal with it, and plus it helps you to understand which is the cause, because it can be, I don't know, the fact that I don't see my friends, the fact that I have problems at home or my parents are arguing. So to create that space and to understand more, wow, I really appreciate the fact that you feel comfortable talking about this with me. Would you like to share more about this? Maybe we can set a time in which, I don't know, we stay 15 minutes to speak about it, but to create that space in which to find out what's the reason for depression. And then we can apply many things. If it's a matter of, I don't know, not doing so much activity, or I don't know, if it's something related to school. And then, of course, what can we do? And I said this also in the talk about mental health, you know, to each one of us to try and understand better what depression means, because there are a lot of materials online, and a lot of people understand already what depression means, because it's such a common and popular subject. And then to try to understand which are the key things that we can do. But the most important thing is in depression, the person disconnects from people. They lack, nu mai primesc aceeași, so practically what we get from people, it's also resources, it's validation, it's appreciation, it's connection, is satisfying the psychological needs. And when we have depression, is broken. We are disconnected. We cannot be happy in relationships and have depression. We just cannot. So it's a matter of finding out what's the reason and to try to take care of that need specifically. But being there, I think it's a great step.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. There is another question in private. From what age can depression and anxiety exist? I'm curious if my students can have it no matter how old they are. Yes, for sure. We have depression also in children, in early children. We have anxiety from a really, really early age. Also depression and also anxiety. So I would say really early. And again, there's another question. To be able to see what depression looks like, because sometimes, we just take it as a normal passing by state. But if we see that it's a constant behavior, if we see that it's something that, I don't know, is very specific to that child, to that student, and then yes, Raluca, I see the hand up after. To try to understand which are the symptoms of depression. That it's lack of I don't know, lack of desire to interact with others, or feeling sad, or seeing the negative all the time, or having anxiety, because anxiety and depression, they combine themselves. We call it comorbide. I mean, it's 70% chances that if I have anxiety, I will have also depression, and vice versa. It's 70% chances that if I have depression, I have also anxiety. They go one another. So yes, to answer the question, depression and anxiety exist from a really early age. Raluca.
Yes, I know we've discussed this before, but maybe it's helpful if you remind us, Raul, like of a toolkit in that we as adults, but also kids, we can suggest to kids a toolkit to pick yourself up if you feel like you are too anxious, or if you feel the pressure kicking in. What are the first things that you should do as an adult, or what are the first things you can recommend to your kids or to our students?
Mm-hmm. For every of this hard emotion, thank you for the question. It's important to have physical practices that help us to process the emotions. If it's anxiety, if it's depression, it means that I will feel it in the body. It means that maybe if it's anxiety or stress, I will feel it as pain, as migraines, as, I don't know, heartbeat, and so on. If it's depression, it's lack of resources. And first of all, it's important to activate the body. In anxiety, it doesn't mean to stress the body even more, but it means in anxiety, it means to try to understand what's the source of the anxiety. Because, from a discussion, we can see, okay, so what's making you feel worried? What are your thoughts? I think that I'm not going to see my friends anymore. Or I think that I'm going to get the disease, or to see what's the cause. And in anxiety, one of the most important things is to address the anxiety, to normalize it. Like Elena had this really nice talk. It's okay, it's normal, it's fine. We are living in these days in which all of us, we feel, fear, worry, anxiety, and so on. So it's okay to feel anxiety. Tell me more about this. And let's see what are the steps in which we can expose ourselves. Let's see which is the space which is healthy for us, but not to avoid it, because avoidance, isolation stimulates anxiety, because I stay in my mind. The fact that we don't speak about emotions in boys, in girls, stimulates anxiety, because first of all, I have to deal with it. I have to deal with it on my own. I have to try to avoid speaking about it. So it's a lot of pressure. When it's in relationship with, when we speak about depression in children, we really need to activate the body, even if it's hard, even if I don't want to, even if it's a lot of negativity. Okay, let's try and do the things that gives us pleasure, because that's one of the things that happen in depression. We lose pleasure in the things that used to make us, to give us pleasure. I don't know, meeting with the friends, or playing sports or whatever. So to try to do things that give us pleasure, to try to speak about to normalize them, but to speak, to just talk, to acknowledge, to get more self-awareness. Where do you feel it? What are your thoughts? I hope I answered the question.
Can I add to that?
Yes, sure.
And so yeah, and so that's the way, definitely normalizing. So just on the practical side of a teacher, I think as a teacher, always thanking them for the trust. So if students have the courage to speak up with you, if students have the courage to show these to you, it means they trust you. And to acknowledge that, it is very, very, very important, because it is to validate that trust and to validate the way they feel. So always thank them for the trust. Even if you might be freaking out inside yourself for realizing that they might be depressed, still say thank you. And then there is a mental cognitive component of mental health, and understanding more, normalizing and speaking up, it's very important. And as Raul was mentioning, there is a physical component. So the two influence each other. So we can act on cognitively, mentally, which also modifies the physiology, but we can also act on the physiology. So asking, what are you eating? You know, if they're eating junk food, lots of sugar, that will give them heights, and then they will feel really low. If they're drinking lots of coffee because they are anxious, sometimes when we are anxious, we kind of look for things, even food, that matches, that physiologically matches that level of activation of the sympathetic nervous system, of the nervous system. Yeah, we're anxious, we're very activated, we might drink more coffee because it's kind of like an addiction. That's how we feel, we are used to feeling. So even asking, how much coffee are you drinking if it's a secondary student? What are your eating habits? Is there something that you can modify? Sometimes that also works together. Have you been for a walk?
Thank you. Thank you for completing the answer. I have a question. It's in private. What do you do when you see a colleague, friend struggling, but they don't want to accept they need help? This is a very frequent question. Thank you for asking it. So when the person has mental problems, emotional problems, when the mental health is a bit down, and I remind you that each one of us can be in that situation. It's not a matter of some people. It's really, really important not to be very direct, because the resources, remember, the resources of the person are down. So they cannot handle so easily a difficult conversation or a recommendation, I don't know, to see someone or to discuss someone. So to try to look at our ability to build trustworthy safety relationships on the long term, to before, I don't know, we make the recommendation, the suggestions, to try to build that safe space, because personal safety is something that help us to be more present in a situation in which we feel stress or tension or so on. And when I trust you, when I feel safe and I know that your intentions are good towards me, I will be much more open to hear what you have to say, to hear what you are trying to recommend. But please, you know, and I'm trying to speak from the point of view of the mind of the person that is struggling, let's say. Please do not come to me too direct. Please do not come to me and expose me too quickly in a situation that I cannot deal with. So first of all, try to take care of the needs of our relationships. Try to understand my coping mechanisms. If you see me being defensive or critical or blaming you or detached, understand that behind these behaviors, there is vulnerability. Maybe it's the fact that I don't understand that I have a problem. Maybe it's fear. It's fear that, oh my God, what I'm going to do. And I don't know, I was learned how to ignore them. So first of all, to try to look at the relationship, try to see, to connect and to create a dynamic in which I will be willing to hear what you have to say because you want to help me in this situation. I hope I answered the question. There are many questions in private, but Raluca, I see you with the hand up. Raluca.
Yes. Hello. Hello. Yeah, I want to ask a question. It's related to working with students. So I'm a tutor, and since the school started, I had many discussions with my students regarding depression. A lot of them face and struggle with these types of anxiety, panic attacks. And it's so nice to know that I can help them. I can share from my own experience. We can talk about it. But at the end of the day, maybe I don't feel it right then. But after a period of time, I feel that my head is going to explode. I have so much information from so many people regarding depression, panic attack, anxiety. And then my question is exactly as Elena was saying, we have to protect ourselves somehow. But I don't really know actually how can I protect myself. Because I have the feeling that everything is under control. I'm so happy that I can help. But then, I don't know, time passes and I feel like it's too much.
Yeah.
So I reach that moment. I don't know how I can protect myself along the way so that I don't explode.
I get what you're saying, and thank you for sharing that. So it's important, as I said, in order to take care of the mental health of others, to first take care of ourselves. If I don't feel good, or if or it's too much, I'm giving too much energy, too much resources, and I'm on minus, then it's going to be problematic. So to see, I don't know, what are my boundaries, like what's okay, what's fine for me, and to put a limit there, to put a limit to myself. Okay, this is how much I can give from an emotional point of view, and to understand better and better the limits that I'm setting to myself. Then it's going to be much more easier to communicate them to others, and to know which are the practices that help me to get back those resources. Is it friends? Is it sport? Is it eating good? Is it, I don't know, relaxing? Because one of the things that helps us all to have better mental health is community, right? So what you're doing, the fact that you're talking, the fact that you're normalizing these things is super important for mental health, because our mental health depends on the mental health of my colleague, of the family, of the community in which I live and I work. The fact that I contribute to the well-being and the mental health of the community helps me to have better mental health, to be more resilient. On the other hand, as I said, it's important to know which are the limits that I'm setting to myself, and to set those limits, to understand and to be more self-aware on when is it time to, to just take a break, or to stay, or to stop. I really want to hear and understand and know more about this, but it's going to be necessary to have this discussion another time. The fact that I'm putting in schedule, and this is something that is happening also when people are calling to go to a psychologist and they are in a very bad mood. The simple fact that they make that phone call and they know that they have next week a session from 9 to 10, or I don't know where, it's immediately something that's helpful. So you can set the limit. Let's talk about this tomorrow in the break time. You're already helping.
Okay.
Can I
Like
jump?
you have the feeling that you need to solve everything. I mean, I have the feeling that I need to solve
You have,
everything.
yeah,
It's
yes,
like,
but
oh,
you
if I'm
don't.
not doing it, I will
You don't.
disappoint. And
You don't have
ah,
to. You don't. Keep this in mind.
okay.
Just to add to that, I think there is a distinction between a student approaching you and needing to open up to disclose that they're feeling anxious and depressed. And in that case, it is our duty of care to find time in that moment and listen. If it's a disclosure for the first time, it is a teacher's duty of care to be present in that moment. Because if then we say, come back another time, we lose that opportunity. But that is different from then, as Raul was saying, as you guys were saying, and then going on with that and trying to solve things. Yeah, your duty of care is to be there when there is a disclosure, not to lose that opportunity. After that, on the practical level, at the school level, there are, just reach out if you feel it's too much. And because if it is too much for you, we might put in place other types of support, or we might even recommend parents or students that they seek professional help outside the school. And also perhaps try to turn the conversation into rewards and beauty. Meaning that sometimes people who are very anxious or experiencing some kind of depression kind of are in a loop of thoughts. And perhaps in a classroom situation I'm talking about, we can break the loop by okay, guys, what was the best reward in this week? What did you experience that was good? And try to shift the energy in the classroom so that people jump in thinking more positively.
Right, right. So to make, thank you, Elena, for saying this. To make a shift, first of all, in my mind, and to move it on a positive opportunity kind of. So then I will transmit it to the others. Let's just think of one thing that happened good this week. Thank you. There's another question. How to encourage another person to identify the source of her own stress? When is it obvious that the person struggles and for a long period but rejects any help from others? Yeah. So how to help and encourage another person? I would say that the personal example is the most important. People tend to trust us when we come from a good place. If we are not from a good place, the other person will not take the recommendation. And I'm sure that you had this, don't tell me, look at you kind of situation in your lifetime. I had it many times, and sometimes it was for the right reason. So to try, to look, first of all, we really like to help others, but remember that we are helping others also invisibly by helping ourselves, by taking care of our own needs, by connecting with the needs, with the fundamental needs that we have, and to take care of them with daily practices. We will have the resources, and it's going to be much more easier for us to find specific solutions for specific situations. When it's obvious that the person struggles, well, as I said in the beginning, I gave some examples on how can I see that I'm starting to have problems with my mental health. I'm reactive in situations in which normally I have much more patience. I postpone things. I have the tendency to blame others. I'm tensed, body, physically. I have thoughts that, I don't know, sometimes it's visible on the face, that I'm worried, that I'm irritable. It's visible on my well-being, if I'm sleeping good, if I'm eating good, if I'm jumpy to enter in conflicts, if I take personal things, if I have sadness or fluctuations of emotional states, if I lost interest in activities that used to give me interest, then I am in a situation in which, yes, I need support and help. I hope I answered. Let's take two more questions. How do you think we should react to people who do not believe in the existence of the virus and do not want to wear masks and respect rules and become even kind of paranoid? I would say to this, to try to not be too stressful. For me, for instance, one of the things that makes me angry is when, for instance, I feel from exterior that someone has this "I'm right, you're wrong" kind of attitude. I'm wearing the mask, you're not wearing the mask. You're wrong about this, and this definitely doesn't help me. It even more, it gives me the impression that I'm not being accepted, integrated. So first of all, to try to, okay, it's important to respect rules, but it's impossible to respect 100% of the rules. Some people are more comfortable with respecting the rules. Some people have to invest a greater level of resources to respect all the rules. Not all the rules are the best rules all the time. This doesn't mean that we have to be rebels about the virus. And I don't know, it's like there's, well, not a good example for now, so I'm just gonna leave it. But you know, try to not be extremely stressful with, I don't know, because people feel this, you know, and they lose trust. And when people lose trust, they will never listen to the recommendation. Maybe to have a kind and warm conversation, you know that it's important. What makes you, I don't know, is it something difficult for you? Maybe your nose is itching, or maybe you have difficulties with breathing. What do you think would help you maybe to change the type of the mask, but not to be too direct? You know, you're not doing this not to be critical. Criticism does not help us. Elena, I see you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and I was yeah, basically the same point. So to move from "I am right, they are wrong," and try to shift the conversation at that level of what is best for both of us right now. Whether you believe in that or not, I would like to feel safe. So the courage of asserting yourself, which sometimes is lacking, and we compensate by becoming emotional or angry. But what it might take is the courage to assert ourselves. So maybe self-reflection, where is this emotion coming? Is it really anger towards that person, or is it I don't have the courage, I feel too uncomfortable to tell them to put their mask on? And once we reflected, then we communicate.
Great, thank you. There's another question. Tell us a little bit about panic attacks, please. What can we do if we have one? So panic attacks are one of the most extreme forms of anxiety. They can debilitate you. And most of the people, when they experience it, so first of all, you have to have at least 4 physical strong reactions out of a lot, like, I don't know, heartbeats, or your head spinning, or shortness of breath, or physical reactions, pain, the idea that, I don't know, you will die, because most people, when they have panic attacks, they think that they will have a heart attack. So they go to the doctors, which is okay to go and get tested to see that you're okay from a medical point of view. But the most important thing that I've learned after I had a massive panic attack at one point in my life was that trying to control what you're feeling in that moment and to put pressure on yourself to not feel what you're feeling will make the panic attack even bigger. So what's happening is that you have some physical, so you have a stimulus, I don't know, someone is yelling at you, and you have some physical reactions, heartbeat, la 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 la. You get conscious and self-aware of the fact that you have those emotions, and you interpret them in a negative way. Oh my God, I'm dying. Oh my God, what's happening to me? Oh my God, which makes it even bigger. So what we have to do is to accept the fact that sometimes the heart is beating, that sometimes we have these thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. They will pass. Emotions and physical states, you know, it's normal. And to have this self-talk, it's normal to have bigger heartbeats. It's okay, let me just calm my breath. Let me just take a break. Let me just accept the fact that now I have 5-10 minutes in which maybe I don't feel so good. And then, of course, to start to understand, to learn more about what panic attacks means, to try to normalize them. But yes, it's very, very difficult to have a panic attack. And the most important thing is, after you have one, you stay with the stress. When will the other one happen? Sometimes it's necessary, you know, to speak with a specialist, to have a therapeutical relationship. Therapists can really, really help with panic attacks. I mean, we have protocols in limited time. We can, and very important to try to give, because we give such a negative connotation to panic attacks. Panic attacks sometimes come in our life to tell us something about our lives. I don't know. I had, for instance, I've been working with a boy, man, that came to therapy and said, I just want to get rid of this. This is the worst thing that can happen. I cannot believe that it's happening to me. It's debilitating me. Do something. And then after we had some sessions, he realized, out of therapy strategies, he realized that he was having these panic attacks because his life was really, really messy. He was using drugs, he was using alcohol, his relationships were really, really bad. His work was not working properly because he was getting high and so on. So what this panic attacks did, he started to eat well, he started to go to the gym, he started to have a good sleeping behavior, his relationship started to change. Yes, it was a really difficult life lesson, but this was the good part of his panic attacks. So to see, to try to understand what's the good in the panic attack, although it's almost impossible when you experience it. Okay. So in the context of going from offline to online, and in the pandemic contest, when there is a high level of anxiety, what is important to do as a team? It's important to have regular meetings. I know maybe it's stressful, oh, again online, oh, again, I have to put my camera on, but the fact that I prepare myself to go online, the fact that I put a blouse, I do my hair, I brush my teeth, I know that I have predictability in those meetings, help me to, as a team, to handle anxiety. The fact that I have a space in which I feel more and more trust, more and more safety. And this means, okay, also to talk about the difficult things, but also to talk about projects. When we talk about having a project, medium term, long term, it helps my mind to calm down and to find purpose and to feel that I belong, to feel that I'm part of something which is bigger than myself and my anxiety. So this will help regulate the anxiety, to have predictability in the meetings, one time per week, once every second week, to have space to discuss about the difficulties, but not just about the difficulties, to also talk about projects, to also, because, you know, anxiety comes in our life sometimes when we don't have life projects, when, I don't know, we arrived to the point, the professional point, we have family, we have everything, and we don't have projects. And that's when anxiety arises. Okay, so what's my life now? So to try to integrate also the discussion about projects and to see what are the responsibilities of each. I hope I answered to the question. Okay, nice to see you. For me, it's very hard to wear a mask outside. Until now, I was very upset of, I'm trying to also translate on people in stores that they don't wear, especially because I saw children of 8 and 9 that wear 8 hours per day and they don't comment. Now I am the one that doesn't want to wear it on the street. It seems to me that it takes my freedom, where I go outside and I breathe. So how can I behave in this? So first of all, with a lot of compassion, I would like to say that although it's provocative and although it's something that we have to invest, you know, being rebellious as an adult, it's not really the best thing to do nowadays. We have options also on wearing the mask outside. We can, I don't know, try to do a mask which is more easy to wear, which doesn't make the nose itch, and so on. Sometimes we can take the mask down and we can breathe easily because we don't have to wear it. This is related to the discussion before and about, you know, respecting 100% the rules or not respecting them at all. Let's see it on a spectrum. You know, I can take 2 minutes break and take my mask down and breathe when I don't see people around me. When I and you know, if I don't like wearing the mask, but if this is what will help us, we are trying, you know, to figure out and to find out ways in which we can stay healthy. But as an adult, really, I think it's important to not be rebellious in, I don't want to wear the mask outside because it takes me from my freedom. The freedom is limited for all of us. We can go outside and we can act, you know, like breaking the cars or the windows or so on, and to help also others to be more angry and more frustrated. But this is not gonna, you know, revolution is not the time to make a revolution. So let's, you know, find the space in which we don't have 100% to respect it, but not to be rebellious. This is my recommendation. Right. We have 3 more minutes. Please, please, please. You know, this is my the way that I like to close things. Write 1 or 2 things that you take from this meeting, maybe in the chat, so that we can close it in a nice way. And I'm really, really curious also what was important for you to hear now. Elena, how did you felt in this meeting, in this sharing?
Well, grateful for the opportunity to be doing this. And actually, I would like to close it with a reminder of practicing gratitude and self-listening, which again, it might sound very hippie, but it's actually very practical. So if we listen to ourselves and we are grateful for ourselves, then we can be open to listen to others. And gratitude is a practice that makes us see the beauty in the difficulties. Even in the worst situation, even in the middle of the panic attack, what is this telling me and why? How can I be grateful?
Thank you. Very nice. So I see a lot of messages. Thank you for sharing them. Not to lose trust, build relationship. It's not about, yeah, there are a lot of messages. Maybe you can read the messages from the colleagues. This helps us to connect with each other, even if we have limited, you know, space. But still, I don't know how you experience it, but for me, it's giving me a little bit of resources and energy. The fact that I'm meeting with people, the fact that I'm sharing, the fact that we ask questions and we speak about, I don't know, ourselves, of course, in a balanced way, not to go all drama or, you know, to keep it balanced, to keep it on the spectrum. This is what really helps me these days, to see it on a spectrum and to try to find the middle of the spectrum. Not to find the extremes. The extremes are difficult to handle, are difficult, you know, to be in them. Right, so it's 10:30. Thanks for being here today. And it was really a pleasure to see many, many known faces. And thank you for keeping your cameras open. Wow, I think this was the first time when I saw so many cameras open during a conversation on Zoom. It was really nice. So have a good weekend, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.